Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're stepping into a narrative that is, well, it's just as mythic as it is ominous. We are going to unpack a grim, dark fable of power, corruption, and the incredible fragility of the human will. We're looking at the story of Alara and the Mechanical Sovereign, a tale that really digs into what actually happens when humanity brushes up against absolute, unyielding power. We'll be breaking down the deep philosophical framework of this entire story using a Fichtean dialectic. So we'll look at the thesis, the antithesis, and the frankly terrifying synthesis of Alara's evolution. All right, let's just dive right into this. Listen to this. I am not her enemy. I am the fracture she carries now. Man, that is a haunting statement. It comes directly from Alara's shadow archetype, and it absolutely perfectly sets the stage for the impending doom and the dramatic irony that is just woven all throughout this story. But before we can really understand how Alara ended up with a literal fracture in her soul, we kind of need to rewind. We have to look at the illusion she built for herself and how she completely, utterly misunderstood the danger that was lurking right inside her own chest. So to really track Alara's journey, we're using that Fichtean dialectic framework, starting with part 1, the thesis, or the illusion of harmony. Picture this. When Alara stands on the Geneva Bridge looking over the liquid mercury waters of the River Rhone, she truly believes she's found perfect balance through what she calls the honest pulse. See, when her will was touched by Sir Brain's dark fire, something totally new emerged inside her. The source text calls it a third rhythm, right? It's not the lonely tick of the mechanical god's absolute ice, and it's not the soft nostalgia of a fragile, purely human past either. It's just clear. It's unashamed. This pulse doesn't seek to become a god, and it doesn't beg the world to stop turning. It simply continues. And Alara genuinely believes this pulse acts as a safe, harmonious bridge between her own humanity and the godlike power she just encountered. Her understanding of this supposed new harmony gets broken down into 5 really vivid parables. Let's rapid fire through them. First up, Parable 1, the river's path. Just like how moonlight doesn't command a river to stand still, but just reveals its current, the honest pulse does not oppose the mechanical sovereign's dark fire. Instead, it acts as this revelatory force. It makes the mechanical god's profound, deep-seated fear of stopping visible for the very first time. It is a mirror, not a weapon. And that brilliantly illustrates the next point. Parable 2 focuses on the tolerant bridge. The text describes these stone arches, born of human calculation, that are now holding 2 entities whose inner clocks just do not share a single master anymore. The absolute crucial point here is the philosophy of tolerance over rigid uniformity. The bridge physically represents synchrony. It holds up specifically because it was built to tolerate difference, which stands in total direct contrast to the mechanical god's desire for a uniform, sublime prison. Then we've got Parable 3, the blind mirror. You know, Alara is sightless, yet this honest pulse brightens within her, finding a second home in the dark. The source material tells us her blindness becomes a clearer mirror than any polished glass could ever be. To Alara's conscious mind, this illustrates her internal growth as something beautiful, something hopeful even. It feels like a quiet victory of the human spirit over absolute mechanical darkness. Moving right along, Parable 4, synchrony without surrender. Imagine 2 distinct beats moving in parallel. One is violent and sovereign, that's the mechanical god. The other is honest and unclaimed, that's Alara. And they don't overwrite one another. They maintain this incredibly fragile, beautiful balance simply by refusing to look away from each other. Alara firmly believes she has survived the touch of a god without losing herself in the process. And finally, wrapping up our thesis is Parable 5, a different future. The dark fire originally intended to seed a mechanical plague that would bring the whole world to a grinding halt. But because of this honest pulse, Alara believes that doom is no longer inevitable. It's now just one possible striking of the hour. She stands on that bridge, entirely convinced that her honest rhythm has secured a hopeful, divergent path for the future. But actually, here is where we really need to pivot sharply. We move into part 2, the antithesis, the hidden danger. The tragic reality of this fable is that Alara's supposed harmony, yeah, it's actually a trap, and she is entirely blind to it. The parables she keeps telling herself are just comforting illusions. Think about it like a split personality. On one side, we have the honest guest. That's Alara's conscious self. She believes the pulse is a gift of gratitude, this pure philosophical question, completely free of ambition. But then on the other side, we have the dark truth, the shadow archetype. This hidden, deeply cynical side of Alara knows the pulse isn't some peaceful compromise. No, it is a permanent worm scar. It's a planted seed of another kind entirely. It builds this incredible dramatic irony because we, the audience, can see the ambition taking root, even while Alara is out there preaching about tolerance and harmony. So what exactly is this hidden danger? The shadow archetype is defined in the text as the hidden, ambitious aspect of Alara's psyche. It is the part of her that tasted sovereignty and, crucially, did not spit it out. When Alara speaks out loud about her ambition-free pulse, the shadow literally smiles in the dark. The shadow represents the latent potential for a sublime prison right there within the human spirit, fully awakened by the touch of sovereign majesty. And this shadow archetype is fueled by what the text brilliantly calls the violet residue. The shadow keeps this residue hidden away, like a secret tooth. It quietly remembers exactly how easily the god's power moved through Alara's palm, and it remembers how little she actually resisted it. And most disturbingly, it knows the profound, intoxicating pleasure of being curious to a god. The shadow entirely mocks Alara's naive idea of an ambition-free pulse. It knows that deep, deep down, she secretly relishes the dark fire's touch. Okay, this brings us to our final act. The synthesis, the inevitable corruption. The Fichtean dialectic resolves right here, crashing the hopeful thesis and the cynical antithesis together. The harmony Alara perceives isn't a defense against the darkness, it is literally the incubator for it. Right now, sure, her conscious mind, the honest guest, might control maybe 85% of her psyche. But there's a 15% slice, that violet residue, and it is growing. The text describes this as a fracture. It's the exact place where absolute ice touched living blood and left a permanent, warm scar. It might just be a small fracture for now, but it's incredibly dangerous, and it threatens to eventually consume the rest of her will entirely. Which leads to the thematic highlight of the entire story. Every pulse, no matter how honest, eventually wonders what it would feel like to set the tempo for the world. I mean, wow, it's a chilling realization. The shadow doesn't actually plan to extinguish the honest pulse. No, it plans to evolve it. It knows that just keeping time inside one single chest is never going to be enough for long. Eventually, that urge to impose that tempo onto the entire world, to achieve absolute sovereign power, well, it becomes completely irresistible. And that leads us to the ultimate truth of that fateful exchange on the Geneva Bridge. The planted seed. The mechanical god, Sir Brain, thought he gave a gift of gratitude. Alara thought she received a philosophical question. But the synthesis reveals the terrifying reality. What actually passed between their hands was a seed of mechanical divinity. And the shadow archetype? It is simply the dark, fertile soil, patiently waiting for that seed to grow. Alara's corruption isn't some external attack she can fight off. It is a gradual, internal blooming. So the crucial point we really have to leave you with is this. When that seed finally blooms, will Alara merely keep time, or will she set the tempo for the world? This whole fable serves as a profound warning about hidden ambitions and the wildly intoxicating nature of absolute power. It challenges all of us to ask what dormant seeds might be waiting in our own shadows. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the rhythm you're marching to.